Hello and welcome to OpenMind. Today we are thrilled and blessed to have with us Mr. Ram Sharan Ahuja. At over 80 years young, Mr. Ahuja has led an incredibly eventful and fascinating life. He is the brilliant author of two very captivating books. The first is The Endless Learning Curve, Memoirs of a Forever Curious Soul. And the second book, Post-Independence India, A Perspective, which is a compelling narrative of India's journey through its heritage, its hopes, aspirations, failures, turmoil, resilience, and a bright future. He is in the process of writing his third book, which is a compilation of experiences of people like him who made a trek from Pakistan to India at and just after the partition. Reading these books, I came to appreciate his very keen and thorough perspective on India, Indian history, and Indian politics, but from a perspective of a common man. In today's episode, we will have a unique opportunity to hear firsthand about Mr. Ahuja's experiences as a child during the tumultuous time of partition. Forced to leave his ancestral home in Montgomery, which is in Pakistani Punjab, and forced to relocate to India, his story provides a poignant and personal insight into the harrowing events of that era that we have forgotten. We aim to understand the dire circumstances that led to his family's decision to leave Pakistan, the challenges they faced along the way in coming to India, and the profound impact of partition on their lives. Join us as we delve into the history through the eyes of someone who has lived it. Mr. Ahuja, thank you for coming and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kapil, for inviting me for this particular podcast. It's a unique experience for me to share my experiences with you.
And it is incredible that these are the events. Some of these events actually happened about 75, 76, 77 years ago. And you were just a kid. And it's not always that you have someone who actually remembers some of these things as clearly as you do.
Kapil, God has been very kind to me. I cannot say, but I do say that I have very sharp memory. I even remember the dates, what happened when. So when we talk, I'll share some experiences with the dates and how did it happen. The fact is that my life has been full of trials and tribulations. And when we go back to the days when I was in Pakistan, I still remember how we were living in a very peaceful, lovely environment. There was no problem, and there was sudden turmoil, and we were forced to leave. So as we go ahead, I'll explain to you.
So incredible, obviously, and incredibly blessed with that kind of memory. But speaking of your age, I think we were talking a few minutes ago, and you mentioned that you actually don't have one single date of birth. You actually have two.
Kapil, I am the one with two dates of birth. And by the way, it's not by any intention. The real date of birth I came to know much, much later. The official date of birth I came to know first. It so happened that when we came from Pakistan, I was about 7.5. But I didn't know much about it. So my eldest brother, who was 22 years older than I, took me to the school for admission, and the teacher asked, what will be his age? I was quite stout. My brother said, Hoga 10 saal ka. He was about 10 years. So without any questions being asked, the teacher simply put 25, 12, 1947 minus 10. So date of birth came as 25th December 1937, which continues to be today, till today, as the official date of birth. And according to this, I am 86.5. It's only when I was passing out the 5th grade, by that time I started realizing that age has something to do. I thought I am 13.5. It occurred to me, how is it possible? I have never failed. Even when I came from Pakistan, I had cleared my 2nd grade and I was to go in September to the 3rd grade. But I was admitted to 2nd grade only for the reason that the language which I was reading was Urdu, and here it was Hindi. The teacher said, you'll have to learn Hindi, then only I'll take you to the 3rd grade. I said, fair. So I think 3 months' time I was able to clear the 2nd grade, and I came to the 3rd grade, so there is no loss. So I was wondering, how is it that I am 13 and a half and passing 5th grade? So I asked my teacher, sir, this is not my correct age. He said, nothing can be done now. When you go to the 10th grade, at that time let your father give a declaration, an affidavit, and the civil surgeon should give a certificate that your age is 15 or so, it will be corrected. I said, okay. Now there is a saying in Hindi, Tere man kuch aur hai, data ke kuch aur. You think something, but God has a different thing for you. You never know why something is happening and why God is taking a particular decision. So I didn't know this 2.5 years which was written in excess than the real age would come to my help. So when I went to the 8th grade, my father lost everything in his business. Not that he did any gambling or anything. The government policy changed overnight and he lost heavily in his business. We came on the road. That time I was actually 13. My father said, you get your name struck from the school and start working. Start earning something so that the family can sustain. I went to my headmaster and requested for withdrawal. He said, no, I will not allow you. I said, sir, I can't afford. He said, I'll waive your fee. I'll give you books from library. If you want, I can give you some money from the Poor Boys Fund also, but you complete at least 10th. Because you have been standing first in the class, how can I allow you to go? I said, okay. So in the 9th grade, I switched over from mathematics and science to commerce. And there I could learn shorthand and typewriting. And by the time I came out of the high school, in India, high school means 10th, not 12th. I was only 15 years and 2 months old. Now you'll ask me, how did I come to know my actual age? My father's 3rd brother, Cyril Ahuja, was very well aware of the changing environment, and he was quite, I think he knew something about English also. He was married on 26th of May 1940. He told me that I was born one day before that. So he said my date of birth was 25th May 1940. I tried to correlate it with my mother's statement. She used to tell me, you were born on 12th of Jait, around 12 o'clock in the day. I don't remember the year. Then I searched in the India calendar and I found that actual 12th of Jait was the same date which my uncle, my Chachaji told me. So my actual date of birth is 25th May 1940 and I have just completed 84, I think on 25th of May.
Happy birthday. It's a little belated though. Actually, very interesting anecdote here as well from my father's perspective. So my father's official age always has been 1st April of 1941. But his situation was very similar. My dadi used to say that he was born sometime in Jait or something. So, but in 1943. That's what my dadi used to say. But since we came from Lahore to Jalandhar and then to Faridabad, we did not bring any birth certificates or something. I don't know whether even they had the birth certificates at the time or not. So when my dad went to school to get his admission done, he said, I want to go into this class. And so the teacher said, what's your age? So my father was very good at math. So instead of answering the teacher's question, he said, what age I should be to be in this class? So he said, on 1st of April, you should be this age. So my father back calculated and he said, okay, so my date of birth is 1st April 1941. He just calculated his age. So he got his date of birth written at the time of admission to the school based on a calculation, and that became his official date of birth. But we knew that his actual date of birth was sometime in, 43 May or something. So a very, very similar coincidence there. So let's go back to your, your birth and your first very few formative years in Pakistan, right? You basically said you basically did second grade in Pakistan. Tell me about your family, your ancestry, like where did you used to live and things like that.
See, what I could gather from my uncles was that my grandfather used to live in a place known as Kubariwala. It was a village, I think about 50 miles from Montgomery. Montgomery is now known as Sahiwal. Originally also it was known as Sahiwal, but in 1865, Robert Montgomery, the Governor General of Punjab, changed his name. The name of the city was converted into as Montgomery, after his name. And in 1967, Pakistan government changed back to Sahiwal. So my grandfather used to live in a place known as Kubariwala. He was having some land and also some business. So he used to lend money to people who wanted for some jobs. One Muslim gentleman borrowed some money from him and he refused. My grandfather persuaded that man who had borrowed money to refund that money. He said, Lala ji, मैंने आज तक कभी किसी को कुछ नहीं दिया. I am not going to pay you back anything. He said, but I have never left any money with anybody. I'll recover every penny from you. He said, okay, then do what you like to do. So my grandfather took a decision, which was a very hard decision to take. He decided to quit that village, but nobody knew. He used to go on a horseback from Kubariwala to Montgomery every night. All night he would go. And next day he would reach there, he hired a room, and slowly he would take some home goods to be carried there and would go and place them. In about 2 or 3 months, nobody could know, because at dark he would leave, nobody know. And slowly he shifted each and everything from his village home, and he took all his family members also. After reaching there, he filed a suit against that man and recovered everything from him. Once he recovered, this man said, where is he? Let me find out. And he went to open the door and he found there nothing. That is how the story goes. When he came, he started a business of iron merchant. Which it was a small business to start with, but over a period of 10 or 15 years, it grew so much that he used to import steel from Tatanagar and also from Australia. The name of his business was Iron Syndicate. It was situated in Sadar Bazaar, Montgomery. And the sheets which would come from Australia had an inscription on it, specially manufactured for Iron Syndicate, Sadar Bazaar, Montgomery. So he was able to forecast steel will be needed for growth. And slowly he absorbed all his sons in that business. But I think it was somewhere in 1940 or so when the business became unwieldy. Then my father left that business to his younger brothers and started his own business. It was known as Bhaiyon Ki Dukaan. It was actually a general merchandise shop which flourished. My eldest brother also joined hand, and the name of the shop was Bhagwan Das Hansraj. Bhagwan Das, my father's name, Hansraj, my eldest brother's name. That's how it worked.
Okay. So that is the status of your family when they were really prospering in Montgomery, right? And this was about 1940. So can you talk about how did the winds of change when partition was getting closer? How did the winds of change come and impact you guys? When did you start to realize that the environment is now very different and there is going to be a partition? And how did, was there any enmity between the groups that used to live in the city? What was the composition of, Montgomery, and how did it start to dwell on you that something is different and it's not going to be very easy for?
Actually, somewhere in late 46, riots started between Muslims and Hindus in northwest Pakistan, at that time northwest India, which comprised Rawalpindi, Multan, Khanewal. But Montgomery was very safe. It was a very peaceful city. People who were uprooted from those places would come to Montgomery, and they were accommodated by my father in a big gathering hall known as Radha Swami Satsang, which had about 20 rooms and a big hall. So all these families who had come from there, who had uprooted, were accommodated there, and they were being served langar. Langar means community kitchen. My father used to reassure them that things will settle down, you will go back. But that was not to happen. And eventually, I remember the date, 18th of August 1947. It was Eid ul-Fitr. And there was a sudden riot in the city. People said there was somebody who teased or tried to touch somebody in the company barn. And because there were riots, so the government immediately announced curfew. My father had gone to Karachi. He came back and he was about to open his shop. But Meherdin, a barber who used to sit outside his shop, asked him, Lala ji, dukaan mat kholiye. Shehar mein danga ho gaya hai. That is right. So my father did not open the shop and went home. Then slowly things started worsening.
From 18th August 1947 onwards.
Montgomery, which was a very peaceful city, turned into a problematic city. The 18th August 1947, on Eid day when riots started, then my father felt that it is unsafe to be living independently. So my grandfather, who had a big mansion with, I think, almost about 20 rooms, asked all the relatives in Montgomery to come and stay there together so that they can be safe. So all the extended family relatives who were living in different parts of the city came and started living in that house. And for about a month we stayed there. During this period we were observing what was happening. But there were disconcerting news around that things are not going to be good, and possibility is that we'll have to leave. Only thing is whether we leave for good or we have to come back. So one day, my grandfather's friends, some Muslim friends, came. And they said, you need not go, you stay back here. Only there are two conditions which you have to fulfill. One condition is that you have to recite kalma. Kalma means La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And second is you have to eat meat with us in the mosque. My grandfather said we are willing to do the first because we believe that that is the name of God. If we say Jai Shri Ram, then we can say there is nothing wrong by saying La ilaha illallah. But we will not accept the second condition, we will not eat meat. In fact, my grandfather told them, I have abandoned my real sister who is married to a family we did not know that they were eating meat. I will not allow this. We'll leave. Then they said, okay. So that time it was decided that we'll leave. It was, I think, mid-September that we decided to go in groups. The first group was my father's family and my Mamaji's family. We packed up with some small baggages. I remember some 2-3 bags or something, thinking that we'll go to Byas. Byas is the place wherever Guruji's dera is there. And we said we'll stay there for a while, and when things settle down, we'll come back.
So in those days, like, how did you keep your wealth? Like, were you able to carry some of the wealth with you, or were you able to transfer the funds? Or like, did you basically lose everything when you basically moved out?
In fact, gold, etc., my father had kept in a big box. And that box was buried in the floor. We had not a cemented floor in that house. So he dug a big pit and put that box in which all the gold and jewelry and everything was kept, thinking that when everything comes out, we'll take it out, which was never done.
So which means if someone is listening to this podcast now, they will probably go back to your ancestral house and start to dig.
Nobody knows. Now it is 75 years, 77 years back. He did one thing good which helped us a little later. He had deposits of 8,000 rupees with Punjab National Bank. So when we came to Ahuja in 1947 and started a small business, that time my father went to Ambala and asked for that money which he had deposited in Punjab National Bank, and he was able to take that money out. So in 1947-48, 8,000 was almost, I would say, 80 lakhs of rupees today.
This is a great advertising, by the way, for the banking industry, really, right? Your money can be stolen, but if your money is in the bank, it's safer than...
Yes. Okay. And that helped us to restart the business.
Okay, so let's go back to the story. So obviously at some point in time when you decided that the conditions that were being asked of you to stay back were not something that you could follow, you decided to leave, and then you started leaving in groups. So let's go from there to what happened.
When we reached the railway station, we found it was fully occupied. There was no place even to stand. Trains were coming from Multan, going to Lahore. One train came, nobody could board, it went. Another train came, nobody could board, left. Third train came, that my Mamaji said, no, we cannot wait. It's getting late. It was, I think, about 5:30. He pushed all of us into a compartment and the train moved. I still remember, I was standing in a corner. In those days, there were no fans, open windows, and benches were there, back-to-back benches and sidewise. I was standing in a corner, and when the train left, there was a lot of noise. It means some turmoil was there on the station after we left. We had reached a place known as Okada. When the train reached there, it was about to move from there. There was a sudden noise of people shouting, "Train roko, train roko." Stop the train. They were carrying swords and guns. They were firing. But the train engine driver did not stop. They were able to move out. But still they were shouting and they were coming with the guns. Then the guard came out and he fired, I think, injuring 1 or 2 miscreants, and the train moved on.
And so the guards actually had guns?
Yes, he had a gun. I think by the time we reached Raiwind, it was 8 o'clock. Yes, it was night. When we reached Raiwind, people said, don't go forward to Lahore. Lahore is burning. You will not be safe. So my Mamaji and my father decided we get down at Raiwind and decide what to do. So around 8 o'clock we got down and the train moved on to Lahore. Then somebody said you can go from here to Ferozepur. It is relatively safer. There is another border. It was yet to be decided because nobody knew which would be the area which will be covered in India and which would be in Pakistan, because it was actually I think, yes, by that time it was decided, because we left in mid-September. On 17th of August 1947, Cyril Radcliff, he was a barrister from UK who had come to India to demarcate the boundary lines of India and Pakistan. So according to him, Lahore was on one side, Amritsar on the other side, and Ferozepur was another side, and Kasur was another side. That's how it was divided. So we were told we can go to Ferozepur, and from there we can go to India. That's it.
Why did Radcliffe come to India to draw the line? I mean, did they not have someone from India who probably had lived in India and understood India a little better?
Actually, British people wanted that somebody should draw a line which will make Jinnah happy and Jawaharlal also happy. This man said, I don't know anything about India, I have never been. But they said no. Lord Mountbatten insisted that he should go. And he went there. In my second book, I made a mention about where he says, I committed that blunder. So, Lord Mountbatten insisted that Radcliffe, who was a barrister, should go and finish the task within 3 months. Radcliffe was reluctant to come. But as he called Lord Mountbatten a Dicky. He said, Dicky insisted, I had no choice but to go. So I went there. And being a traditional Britisher, I could not refuse the order of the Prime Minister. Attlee wanted I should do it, so I went there. Hurriedly, he gathered some data, some half-cooked information, and he divided India into 2 parts. In fact, he made one East Pakistan and one West Pakistan. In West Pakistan, he gave Lahore. And in East Pakistan, he gave Dhaka to Pakistan. And to India, he gave Bombay. Karachi, he gave to Pakistan. Calcutta, he gave to India. And he gave Dhaka to, that's how it was divided.
Okay, so going back to the story. So you were at Raiwind.
At Raiwind, we tried to board any train coming and going to Ferozepur, but we could not board. And it started raining cats and dogs. So heavy, no place. We were virtually trenched all night. Next morning, we decided, now what do we do? We cannot stay overnight here and we cannot stay for long. We must go. And we found that one platform is full of people waiting for the train to come for that Ferozepur. My Mamaji said, if this is the way, we will not be able to board the train. We were, I think, about 20 people of 2 families together. He was a street smart person. He met the railway station master. He told him, we cannot board, but you want some way so that we can board a train. He persuaded the station master to change the platform from A to B. And in those days, the station master demanded 500 rupees. He said he didn't have 500 rupees, he had only 200 rupees. Station master agreed to accept 200 rupees. Now, if you take that 200, is equivalent to about 2 lakhs rupees today. He gave that, and the station master surreptitiously changed the platform A to B. We were sitting on the B platform. People were catcalling us. Why are you going there? Train is coming this side. But we didn't bother. We continued waiting. And suddenly there was a flutter on the railway station and the train came on that platform where we were sitting. So as a plan, we boarded the first available bogie and got into it. The moment we boarded, there was a bomb blast on the train.
The B or the A?
On A.
On A, where the other people were sitting.
Yeah. We don't know what happened, but we left. But it was not to be a very happy journey. The moment we entered, we found some Pakistani army people sitting inside with their guns, and the ladies instigating them to fire us and kill us. They would say, how is it these people are going safe? People coming from India are being killed. So they started threatening us. I still remember those horrifying period. We were really terrified what will happen, whether we'll survive or they will kill us. By the time we reached Kasur, which is the border town of Pakistan and India, they were asked to get down by the Indian military. It was still not a completely divided part. It was a common place where Indian military and Pakistan military both were working. So they asked all Pakistanis who are here should get down. Only people who are going to India should stay back. We stayed. But we were told that we had to shut down the windows and doors because nobody was safe. The engine which had hauled the train up to Kasur was to be taken away. It was a Pakistani engine. And an Indian engine was to come from Ferozepur to haul the train to Ferozepur. The 6 hours which we spent in that train, I cannot forget. We were sweating. It was virtually a hearth. We were virtually burning. No water, no food, nothing. We didn't know anything. Everything was uncertain because nobody knew anybody would come and attack. So we had to close the doors and the windows, waiting for the engine to come. After 6 hours, the Indian engine came and the train was hauled out of Kasur, and we reached, I think it was midnight when we reached Ferozepur. But we were safe. When we reached Ferozepur station, RSS people were there. They took so much of care. I wonder why people are hating RSS. At that time, RSS was just about 22 years old. 1925 it was born, and in 1947, they still had volunteers who were willing to come to support people who were abandoning their homes for safety. They gave us food. They took us to the refugee camps. They gave us, of course, they spread beddings on the floors so that we could sleep. It was raining. And over nights we were not able to sleep because of the cries of the people who had been injured and were in the other camps. There were tents erected where families were accommodated. I was a child of about 7.5, but I have distinct memories. I can still recall what used to happen. So for, I think, 4 or 5 days we stayed there. Then we decided to go forward. Now, a worry which was causing us was what happened to our sister. My eldest sister, who was living at a place known as Noor Shah, I think about 50 miles away from Montgomery, was not with us. We didn't know what of her fate. We were worried what will happen. So when we reached Ludhiana, we went to a Gurdwara. We occupied that. And my eldest brother, who was a twin of my eldest sister, would go to railway station every day in search of her.
How did he know that she would even come to Ludhiana? Why not Ferozepur or Bias or something?
Ferozepur we stayed only 4 or 5 days. So it was decided to go forward. Till then we had no knowledge about what would happen because a lot of stories were being heard. They might be rumors or true, we do not know. But people used to say that people were being killed mercilessly. And it was not sure whether she was alive also or not. But my father said, let's go to a place where safer, we'll start searching. So both the families moved to Ludhiana. We stayed in a Gurdwara. And from there, my eldest brother used to go to railway station every day in search of my sister.
And there was no guarantee whether she would show up.
Nobody knew whether she was alive or not. After, I think, 10 or 15 days, one day he was there and he suddenly heard somebody crying, Hansu, Hansu. My eldest brother's name was Hansraj. since she was twin, they were sister brother, she was able to find my brother roaming on the railway platform, and she called him. So when he said Hansu, he felt, oh, it's the voice of my sister. And when he found them, my sister, my brother-in-law, who had at that time 2 sons and 1 daughter. The younger son was actually in the lap of my sister. I think he was about 2 months or 2 months only. The elder was about 3 months younger than I. They were in tattered clothes, disheveled hair, no chappals, no shoes, nothing. Then my brother brought them home, if we could call them home. They were given a bath, given clothes, and then I used to hear overnight when they used to talk in hushed tones. My sister used to narrate the harrowing stories of what happened in Nusha. I remember she told us, my mother, that they were attacked from all sides and they were forced to shift to a temple. They locked them inside, and temple had some cooking material which they would cook. And in the courtyard of the temple, one of the relatives blindfolded himself, had a sword in his hand, and he said all the girls of the family should come. And he cut the throats of all those girls for the fear that if they were allowed to stay back, then they'll be kidnapped and molested by these people who are miscreants. She said we could not tolerate that. We were waiting for somebody to come. So there was one relative, his name was Master Ram Singh. He had somehow managed to get in touch with the Indian military, and he brought a truck to Nusha, in which he brought all these people to Montgomery, and from Montgomery then they boarded the train and eventually landed in Ludhiana. That's how the story is.
Wow, that's a very moving story. I have heard something like this in some Sikh families as well, where they were all, they all found refuge in a Gurudwara, but there were miscreants who were, circling around the Gurudwara, and they had to do the same thing with their girls. It's hard to imagine.
There are so many stories. In fact, the next book which I am writing relates to the heart-wrenching and pathetic stories of India's partition. I am trying to compile information from different sources of people who are still alive. And those who are not there, their stories are available on net. I'll try to search them and try to compile them.
I think it's important for us as people who have not lived through that time to at least be aware of our history and be able to compile it for the next generation to know the horrors of some of these things.
In next 20 years, India will be completing 100 years, 1947 to 2047. I don't think there is anybody alive. I believe that in next 10 years, anybody who was born in Pakistan would not be there.
And this is one of the reasons why talking to you is so important, because you are the one who can actually provide first-hand information of the things you saw, things you heard, and things you experienced. Everything else is second-hand.
In my extended family, when we came, a large number of people were there whom I have seen. My grandfather going, my father going, my uncles going, my mom was going. And now, can you believe there are only 3 people living? I am the youngest, not the youngest. There is one younger cousin sister. She's, I think, 2 years younger than I am. And one elder to me, 2 years, my cousin brother. We are the only 3 souls living. Who knows who will go first is not known. But I believe in the next 5 years or so, all of us will go, and there will be nobody to narrate any story about what happened there.
So who do you blame for the partition of India?
I think it will be uncharitable to blame any individual. There are several people responsible for it. In fact, we have to go back to 1905, when Bengal was divided. Lord Curzon was the Viceroy of India, divided Bengal into two parts. One predominantly occupied by Muslims and one Hindus. There are a lot of protests to this, and eventually in 1911, Bengal was reunited. That partition was finished. But at that time, Indian capital used to be in Calcutta, which was shifted to Delhi. At that time, King George V came to India. And in his celebration, the Gateway of India was erected in Mumbai. And to honor him, Rabindranath Tagore wrote that famous song, Janagan Man Adhinayak Jai Bharat Bhagya Vidhata. It was not for India's freedom. It was to honor him. Later it was adopted as the Indian national anthem. But originally it was to honor him. And after that, again in 21, the Muslim League demanded separate electorate. They insisted the Muslims should be allowed to elect Muslims only and Hindus should be allowed to elect Hindus only. So they should vote only for Muslims and Hindus. British were willing to do this because this suited them. They wanted to divide and rule. So they wanted there should be distinction between Hindus and Muslims. Otherwise, they have been living together for ages. The idea of Pakistan was born in early 30s when the Round Table Conference took place in 1930-31. One Rahmatullah, who was a student in Oxford University, published a paper, Thus Far and No More. Shall we continue to be as we are? We want a separate country known as Pakistan. The name Pakistan was given by him. Then Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, who was the founder of Aligarh Muslim University, said there should be two separate nations. The two-nation theory was propounded by him, supported by Allama Iqbal,
The poet.
who was a poet. That famous song, Sare Jahan Se Achha Hindustan Hamara. But nobody knows after that what he says.
What does he say after that?
He says, in fact, he dreamt of a country which was exclusively Muslim. And that is why Allama Iqbal is worshipped in Pakistan as the founder of Pakistan. Then Muhammad Ali Jinnah picked up that idea. He wanted equal representation for Muslims and Hindus. But Congress party was not willing to do that.
When you look back at the partition, obviously there are the wounds of partition that would never heal, right? And this is in some cases a very sad and sordid story. But when you look at partition of India into India and Pakistan, do you think eventually was it good for us or was it not good for us?
In fact, I can say both ways. It is not good because it has uprooted people from different places for no fault of theirs. There have been instances where the regime has changed, but the populace has been changed is very rare. I think it is the only incident in history of world where the population has moved from A to B and they were forced to flee their places, not by their choice. They were forced because the condition was such that it was impossible for them to stay back. What would they do? If there is a threat to life, a person will run. And that's what happened. Now, I will also say that probably if this would have continued, situation would not have been good, because the demands would always be there. We want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. And no government would be able to satisfy anybody. Muslims will say, we want the entire country to be ours. Hindus would say, we want the entire country to us, which is not possible. So obviously, if it has happened, but it has not been a good decision, I would say. Partition should not have taken place. If they wanted, they could have given some power. In fact, a stage was there when they could have been offered power. They could have been offered participation in the power. But Congress party did not agree. They wanted absolute power, and Jinnah was not willing to accept it. But it is said, and I am not sure whether it is a fact or not, that at one stage Mahatma Gandhi offered Jinnah to be the Prime Minister of India. But he said no.
I think that is going to be the next podcast that we are going to record, which will definitely cover a lot of political characters and the decision making that led to partition. And then we'll also look at the history of India post-partition era. If you had to, give one message based on your life's story of being through such harsh situations in a way, and having to rebuild your life the way you have, what would be the message that you would give to the present generation which has not gone through some of those harrowing times as you have?
My advice or suggestion to this generation would be, let us try to keep peace alive at any cost. Because it is never good to cause harm to anybody, whether it is Hindu or a Muslim. Let us stay together. We have been living together. Why not? Why should you say that there should be a Ghazwa Hind, which means we'll convert the entire India into Muslim? Or why should you say that we want only a Khand Bharat, no Muslims, which is not right? Both of them, they have been staying together, they can stay together again. But when you look at the statements made by some leaders, it is really disturbing. There are videos which I have seen where people say, you wait till 2047, the entire India will become Muslim. And there are videos where people say, no, Muslims will have to be rooted out of India and it will not be Hindu, which is not possible. So let them stay together and let them see that the country grows. How can it grow if all the people work together? If they don't work, country cannot grow. So my request and suggestion and advice to the new generation is, try to have a sympathetic attitude towards each other, respect for each other's religion, their cultures, and let them live. Live and let live is a universal philosophy. Why not do that?
Well, with this message of peace and respect, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences. Some of them were not so good, but I think looking back, they do offer a lot of a glimpse into the history that your generation has lived through and something that we can learn from. And thank you so much for this episode. We really appreciate you coming and sharing your experiences.
Thank you, Kapil, for inviting me. I'd love to come again, and I'll continue to add whatever little I can. I wish I should be able to share whatever experience I've got in my life for the next generations to know what actually happened and how it happened.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you.